Hey, all right. Well, today I am so extremely excited to welcome a very special guest to the Pop Culture Retrospective podcast. Her name is Jane. And just quickly before she introduces herself, I wanted to say that I've been wanting to do an episode on In Living Color for a long time, because if you've followed the podcast for a while, you'll know that shows like In Living Color were a huge part of my upbringing and things that we watched as kids. And so when I decided I wanted to do a show on that, I was kind of like listening to the theme song on YouTube and just kind of getting into the In Living Color mood. And I fell upon this amazing documentary series about the show. And on a whim, I thought maybe I'll contact the person who put together these videos and maybe they'll respond, maybe they won't, to see if they may want to be a guest on the show, because what she put together is fantastic and so informative and does the show so much more justice than I ever could. So I am honored to welcome Jane from the Jane for Short YouTube channel on YouTube. So Jane, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
Yeah, this is so incredible. Thank you so much for responding to my inquiry, because it's always kind of like a, maybe you can relate to this. You kind of reach out to people and hope that it doesn't end up in their spam box, and want to make sure that I'm a real person and I'm a big fan of your work. And thank you so much for responding. So, Jane, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a full-time student actually, based in Indianapolis currently.
Mhm.
We were just talking about the Midwest. I'm actually not from the Midwest. I'm from Virginia.
Okay,
But I moved here to get my master's.
nice.
Um, and so I'm in a writing program. I like writing, I like reading, I like researching. And so I just sort of tried to put all that together in my YouTube channel, where I just talk about usually like Black films, Black TV, Black pop culture, just in general. And I try to give like an alternate perspective. And I try to encourage people to kind of talk about things, because I think my channel is small enough that conversations don't get lost in the comment section.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm about right now.
Yeah, well, your YouTube channel is incredible. It's so well done. I don't know how you have time to put together these projects when you're in graduate school. As somebody who was in graduate school, and that was like the most insane busy time of my life. So thank you for not only finding time to be on the show with that schedule, but also to put together these amazing videos. So yeah, so I stumbled upon your In Living Color documentaries. I think there's three of them, right? There's like the part one, part two, and then kind of what the Wayans family is up to today.
Right.
And then I also recently watched your one I think you did about kind of how sort of the exploitation of artists like Tupac and Biggie, kind of after their passing, and people earning money off
Mhm.
of their likeness without permission from the estate. I didn't know any of that. So you're just doing an amazing job with that. So please keep up the good work. It's awesome.
Thank
I'm gonna
you.
make sure I link your channel in the show notes and stuff like that. But so yeah, so you put together these videos on that are amazing on In Living Color, and what sort of inspired you to create those videos?
I like I said, I like to read, and so I don't do it as much, but I used to just go to Goodwill or like a half price bookstore, and like any book that I thought looked interesting, I would buy it.
Mhm.
And now I have just this sort of ridiculously large book collection full of books that I've never read.
Yeah.
And one of those was Home You Don't Play That by David
Mm,
Peisner.
yep.
I just sort of, I don't even remember buying it. I don't remember seeing it. I just remember walking past my bookshelf one day and I was just like, I've never read that book. I
Yeah.
should read it, because I had never seen In Living Color before. And I maybe got like 3 chapters into the book, and I went online and I bought the DVDs because I was like, I need to see this show. I had
Yeah.
only ever seen Jim Carrey's Informer parody,
Oh yes. Oh God. Yes.
Imposter. I've only ever seen
Yes.
that. That's it.
So good.
And so I had like no context for like what that was even a part of. So I bought the DVDs for way too much money because they're so expensive.
Yeah.
And I was sort of reading the book and watching the DVDs at the same time. And I just get sort of like fixated on things. And so I was
Hmm.
like, I just need to like know everything. I need
Yeah.
to find everything. And as I just kept digging deeper and deeper, it just got like more interesting.
Yeah.
And there were no YouTube videos about it. Not really. Like there were maybe
Yeah.
a few. Um, there are no YouTube videos about it. Like there was only just sort of these obscure interviews of the Wanses or of
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy or Tommy Davidson. And I was just like, someone needs to put this together. And no one else was doing it. So I said I would do it myself.
My God. And it's so good. It's so well done. You incorporate all of these great clips from their TV appearances, old photos, appearances on talk shows, skits from the show. I mean, that is just amazing. Was there something about the show that just told you like, the story needs to be told?
I think it was just all of the interesting sort of behind the scenes lore that I
Yeah.
was finding out primarily from the Peisner book, but also when you go back for like far enough into the archives to find like the interviews and stuff, there were just so many interesting um sort of like things happening that I had no clue about.
Yeah.
Especially as someone, I was born in 1996.
Yeah.
So all of this had taken place before I was even born.
Yeah.
And so I really just sort of had no reference or context or anything. And so I just thought it was so interesting. And also, as I kept digging and watching sort of like New Wayne's properties and putting them next to In Living Color, I was like, oh, that's a reference. And
Mhm.
I didn't even like know that growing up watching this show. Like, oh, Tim Buck is from In Living Color, or
Yeah.
oh, he just said, "Homie, don't play that." Like, I get where that's from now.
Yeah.
And so I not only for like I know that people are nostalgic about it and everything, but for people my age, I feel like I was sort of like my friends and everything. I was like, "Hey guys, like, look, this is where all of this came from," and like we
Mhm.
didn't even know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what really made me want to do it.
Wow. Well, I love that because I think, yeah, so I'm on kind of the opposite spectrum of like, I grew up watching it, and I think my parents did, I grew up in a very, not diverse community at all, which I, freely admit, great place to grow up, but definitely not diverse. But I will say that my parents, I think, did a really great job of exposing both me and my sister to all different kinds of music and TV shows, and comedy was a huge thing that my parents liked to watch. And so my dad watched In Living Color religiously. And so we watched it a lot too as kids. And I remember impersonating Fire Marshal Bill and yeah, homie, don't play that. I'm sure my dad said, homie, don't play that when me and my sister were doing something stupid that we shouldn't be doing. I'm quite certain. I don't think we got hit over the head with a weighted sock, but
Yeah.
and that reference was definitely a part of my childhood. So I love that you discovered it, well after it was aired, and that it still struck you as being amazing, hilarious, creative television that you wanted to learn more about. I think that's so telling of just how amazing that show really was. And and your friends are really lucky that they have you as this source of information on
Ah.
a fantastic show. That's awesome.
Oh, thanks. I
Yeah.
don't know if they think that, but
You might be surprised. Like, your friends can really expose you to things that maybe you wouldn't have normally. And what better thing to expose them to than Living Color for sure. So I think you mentioned in one of the documentaries that your parents, I think, are around the same age as, or your dad's the same age as Shawn Wayans. Did your parents
yeah.
watch the show at all? As their parents are probably a little bit older than I am, so
Yeah, they're both the same age as Shawn Wayans.
it's funny. Nice
And
coincidence. The sign.
yeah, and they did. So they never like talked to me about it growing up or anything, but when I told them like, "Hey, I made these videos and like they're getting a little bit of attention," I was sort of like, isn't that crazy?" And they were like, "No, in Living Color, like it was huge."
Yeah,
And my mom mostly she liked Damon Wayans, pretty much anything Damon did. She
he's
really liked
so
Men
he is so
On.
talented. Oh my God.
He's so great.
Yeah. Oh my
And
God. He's a genius.
I definitely think Marlon was my favorite beforehand, and then after I've watched all of these things, I was like, okay, no, it's David.
Yeah.
And my dad also watched it religiously. He loved it. He liked everything. I was like, Dad, like, who was your favorite, like maybe character? He's like, all of it, the whole thing. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, thanks, Dad. That really like narrows it down. But he really liked Fire Marshal Bill. He really liked
Yes.
Homeboy Shopping Network.
Yep.
He said like anything that Tommy Davidson did, he just thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
And I mentioned to my mom as well the sort of remark that I talk about in there when Marlon said that when the premiere aired, it like stopped crime in Harlem.
Hmm.
And my mom was like, yeah, like so my parents grew up in Newark, New Jersey.
Mhm.
So, about an hour outside of New York City.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, they would be outside all day, and then someone would be designated to come and tell the entire block, like when In Living Color was on, and
Yeah.
everybody would go in the house.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
just thought I was like, that's so cool.
That is so cool. Oh my god, like, what other show is, and especially now, I mean, what other
Right.
show could have that kind of power? That is amazing. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
everybody stop what you're doing and Living Colors on. I think yeah, I think that happened in our house, but just in a different way. But that is so awesome, that it meant that much to your parents and their friends to just, like, drop everything and watch that show. That is incredible. Um, how long did it take you to put these, documentaries together? Because I think the first one is, like, over an hour, right? And I think the second one's,
Yeah.
like, 45 minutes. I mean, these are not, like, 15-minute, this is, like, a very detailed overview. How long did it take you to research and put it all together?
I want to say like in total, I think I want to say everything took about 5 months
Wow.
to write the script, which I just wrote it as one big script and then I broke it up.
Yeah.
I looked at like my Google Docs before we started, and it took me a month exactly to write the script, like
Wow.
exactly 30 days. But in terms of like first reading the books and watching all of the properties and rewatching them and like taking notes and everything, I probably started that, I think September, maybe late August. And then the first video went up in November. And then the
Wow.
last one went up in January.
Wow. That's incredible. And what kind of resources were you able to pull from the book? So you had, well, I guess you had the book that you, got at Goodwill, and then were there some other resources that were valuable to you in putting this together?
Yeah, I found the official like authorized companion for the show. There's still like a couple copies out
Nice.
there on the internet. So I found that. I found this I remember most this documentary about the Comedy Store,
Mhm.
which is where I get a couple of Damon Wayans clips from. And that's where I sort of learned that Damon Wayans was big in television and film and stand up. Like he was just huge in stand up. I thought that was sort of just incredible.
Yeah.
I looked in, since I'm a student, when you're a student, you get access to like all of your school's databases and archives and things like that.
Oh,
So I spent
nice.
a lot of time looking through those, looking through just anything that I could find that had to do with the Wayanses. So I read a lot of books, not a lot of books, but I looked at a lot of books. Like I sort of
Yeah.
paged through them.
Sure.
I read a lot of old articles. I bought like old issues of magazines and like just sort of trying to find everything that I could. I'm a little upset. A few things were sort of like lost to time.
Sure.
Like there's this show that Damon hosted that I really wanted to watch, but there are no copies available anywhere.
Yeah.
But I really did read and watch and listen to like pretty much anything I could get my hands on about
Yeah.
the show or about the Wayanses, like in general.
Wow. That's amazing. That's some serious dedication to this project. That's incredible. Um, that's extremely impressive. My God, again, while you're like a student too, that's like just crazy. Um, so I found what I was really struck by when I started watching the first one was like the whole story of the Wayans family, kind of their early days. Is there anything that you um, found fascinating about kind of their childhood and early days?
Um, I I think that I knew a lot about them already. Just sort of how big their family is, how poor they were. I don't even
Yeah,
know how I found that out. I think it's just sort of common knowledge.
yeah,
But I think what struck me the most is just how much they seem to get along, and how much they really just seem to like one another. Like I
yeah,
love my brothers. I have two brothers. I love them to death, and I like them now.
yeah,
But when I was a kid, not so much.
yeah,
And they always just talk about just how well they got along, how they always stood up for each other. Um, and I just thought that was really cool and interesting, and of course intentional on
yeah,
the behalf of their mother. I also thought it was interesting in The Homie Don't Play That book. David Peisner makes it a point to talk about how diverse their upbringing was.
hmm,
Growing up in Harlem, he said that they were near, the LGBTQ population that was in Greenwich Village. And then in their neighborhood, there were a lot of people of Latino descent. There were Irish immigrants in their neighborhood. And
Wow.
by being around all of those people, they sort of learned to be, I guess, more accepting of other people. And I also think that sort of gave them a springboard from which to sort of launch this kind of comedy that was about stereotypes.
Yeah.
Sort of having that upbringing and knowing about all different kinds of people, you know that there are lots of different kinds of people, and so
Right.
you know how ridiculous stereotypes are.
Right.
And so I think that learning about that, it was surprising, but also it was like, oh, well, of course, because otherwise, how else would you sort of champion or thrive in this brand of comedy
Yeah.
where you need stereotypes in order to prove them wrong, I guess, in order
Right.
to be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing because I guess maybe I had heard a bit about their story, but maybe it's just been so long that I just don't remember. But for
Hmm.
the people listening to the show that maybe don't know, so that yeah, the Wayans grew up. Was there 10 kids in the family?
Yeah, 10
Yeah,
kids.
so the 10 kids. So understandably, their mom had to stay home because I'm sure that woman probably never slept or sat down. And their dad was always had was always employed and stuff, of course, but it it was kind of a struggle to make ends meet and days without having dinner or food to eat and stuff like that, but yet somehow they all sort of relied on each other and made each other laugh. And I think you talked about a game that they would play that
Yeah, make me laugh or die.
yeah. And who was it which one of the Wayans kids was like the top competitor in that one? Was it?
Ken was always like the last to laugh.
Yeah.
He would always try to hold it back the longest.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so telling.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like, again, this is all stuff that I learned from your documentaries. That you talked about how Keenan, was really kind of like a father figure in some kind of ways to his younger siblings, and he put them through comedy camp or something. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think so he put Sean and Marlon, he said, through comedy camp where he would make them watch a comedy movie, and then he would have to, or they would have to report back to him and tell him why it was funny.
yeah,
And he said like he would make them watch everything. He said he would make them watch Monty Python and like had to come back and tell them why it was funny. And I was just like,
yeah,
that's so interesting.
yeah,
And deep. And then it sort of continued on that sort of boot camping and like conditioning when they would write the scary movies,
yeah,
because he made them watch over 100 horror films just so that they could even understand what a scary movie was before they
yeah.
could even begin the script. And I think
Amazing.
that's something that also sort of stays true to Keenan throughout his entire career. And he said, I don't think that it's in the documentary, but in an interview I watched, he said that people get worried about accolades or maybe even accomplishing this one thing, but they need to be concerned with first becoming good at what they do.
Hmm.
And once you become good at what you do, then everything else will come afterward. As long as
Yeah,
you make sure that you are doing your due diligence to be funny or to be a good writer or to be a good artist, then everything will sort of fall into place after that.
yeah,
And I don't know, sometimes, things are repeated to you throughout life and you just ignore them. And then someone says it a different way and you get it. I
yes,
like got it when he said that. I was like, oh, of course, Keenan, I have to be good at what I do.
right. Yeah, he definitely is a very like inspirational, just like solid leadership skills, if you will. I mean, just he didn't want to like hand his siblings anything. He really made them earn
Mhm.
their spots, and I think he really tried to teach them from the mistakes that he made, and help them thrive, but not sort of hand it out to them, which I think um, is really admirable. And something else, I don't know if it was from your documentary too, but I guess can't remember, but I learned too that he's like really into like health and fitness too. And I'm sure anybody in
Yeah.
show business is just surrounded by all kinds of, I mean, substance abuse, no matter what show, industry, music, movies, TV, whatever. But he has kind of stayed true to like getting exercise and, not getting wrapped up in anything, which I think is also very telling and helped him get to where he is, because he's just very driven and focused and isn't going to let anything sort of sidestep him.
Yeah,
Which
I
again,
definitely think even though I say it in the documentary a lot of the times, he's always described as soft spoken. He
Mhm.
always strikes me as a sort of strong person who's firm in what he believes. And so the health and fitness thing, it was interesting to me, but also I was like, of course, that's why he's, I guess, aging so gracefully. He's like
Yes.
almost 70 years old.
Yeah.
And who knew?
Right. Yeah. That's so true. Yeah, he does. He looks exactly the same as he did when he was on the show. He just shaved his head and his hair is a little more gray, but that's literally it.
Yeah, he
That's
looks great.
yeah, he does. He's doing something right. Let's see. How about Rain's family? Da, 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 da. Okay, what do you think was the ultimate motivation for Keenan to create this show?
Um, I really we talked about how he was sort of a leader in his family, a
Yeah,
breadwinner, even though he was one of the kids. And so I definitely think that that was a motivation, because in those sort of earlier years in his comedy career, even though he was, writing for the Jeffersons and stuff like that, he wasn't really making a ton of money.
yeah,
He was sort of slumming it in California. And so here comes an opportunity for you to get a bigger paycheck, for you to provide for your family. Even if he hadn't put Sean in the show and things like that, could have been a production assistant, things of
yeah,
that nature. Um, and then there's also an interview where he says something to the effect of, they offered me a show and so I took it.
yeah,
Because where else is he going to get another opportunity to do a show?
yeah,
They gave him a blank check and said, like, do a pilot. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to do a pilot.
yeah.
And so I think it was really just an opportunity that was too good for him to turn down.
Hmm.
As we see after that, he did the Keenan Ivory Wayans show for a little bit, and he wrote an episode of The Last OG. But after that, it was really just film. And
Yeah,
before that, it was really just film. He wanted to do films. But I think, yeah, In Living Color it was a great opportunity to do something big, and to make the kind of show that he and his friends would be interested in.
yeah.
And yeah, so I think that that's why he really took that opportunity.
Yeah. And what I can't think of a better person to pick to put together the show. I mean, so like, he has like the business sense, the, leadership skills and I mean, sense of humor to create something that was unlike anything that was on TV up until that point. And I'd say the similar now too. I mean, there's just nothing that really compares to that show. And I know for a lot of us that grew up watching that show, have said that there has never been anything on TV as funny as that show was, and nothing will ever be again, because it was just so well done. And I think
Hmm.
one of the clips you had put into Damon Wayans was talking about how one thing that really made the show work too is that their skits were shorter. And on SNL,
Hmm.
sometimes the skits, and I totally agree with this, they just go on and on and on. And I like Saturday Night Live, it kind of ebbs and flows, but um, it's okay. But I think they were like just short and sweet and to the point and like just so good, and it held people's attention not only because it was funny, but because it wasn't dragged out and had too much dialogue or too much stuff happening. It
Yeah.
was like the perfect length of time. It was just so well executed. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, just so good. Um, do you have so in looking back on the show now that you've watched, I'm sure you've watched a ton of episodes, is there a reoccurring character or bit that is your favorite from the show?
So recurring, oh my gosh, I love that so much. Recurring, I think the brothers were
Yes.
really funny. I love the
So good.
brothers.
Yes.
But I think like my favorite recurring sketch was probably Keenan as Arsenio Hall.
Mhm.
Um, it, it was just so good. It was so good. And also like knowing, I guess, just how in character he would get.
Yeah.
I think it just makes it a little bit funnier. And just the big butt and the long
Yes.
finger.
Yes.
Oh, just iconic. It's hilarious. And also the fact that Keenan's like 6'5", I think.
Yeah. Something like that,
And
yeah.
he's like just jumping all around this stage and sliding across the floor. It was just ridiculous, but hilarious.
Yeah.
It's so funny. And even though I had never seen In Living Color, I had seen the Arsenio Hall show before,
Yeah.
the newer version and the older version. And so that was something that I came into it with the context already. And yeah, I just thought it's just perfect.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
what was your favorite?
it's like asking me to pick who's my favorite child. That's a really
Yeah.
tough one. I think I liked when Keenan Ivory Wayans was Frenchie. That character was
Mhm.
just like so over the top, like Rick James slash just I, I don't know. That was just he just did that so well.
Yeah.
I think when Jim Carrey does the background guy thing,
Mm.
like on the news, where there's a conversation he acts ridiculous, is like so on point. And I think I also really liked Damon Wayans. Is it Anton, where he
Yeah.
plays the homeless guy? Which I think there's so much that people would probably debate today, but I think at the core of it, it was actually a pretty well developed character, which is I think again something that you touched on, that he played more complex characters. It wasn't just like it wasn't about like making fun of like homeless people. It was about he was like could recite poetry and on the subway in front of people, but he just really embodied an intoxicated person so well. I don't know how. I mean, he's so convincing and just so funny, and the
Yeah.
character is so endearing. You're like, I would like to have coffee with Anton because he just seems like a really
Yeah.
hysterical
I
person.
I agree.
Um,
I really liked Anton as well for that
yeah,
reason. I thought that he was entertaining, but not the kind of entertaining that's like, okay, but I would never like want to be in a room with you.
right.
Like he's the kind
Yeah,
of entertaining that, yeah, Anton, like let's have a conversation, or yeah, Anton, sit next to me on the subway
right. Yeah,
because you'll
it would
keep
make
me
the
entertained the whole time.
right, exactly. No matter how long that train ride would be, it would go by fast because he's such a interesting character. Yeah, there's that, and then I also love when Kim Wayans does any like musical impressions. I find hilarious because again, I grew up on all of that music. So when she was making fun of the Crystal Water song, and I'm trying to think what the title of the original song is, but she parodies it and says a bunch of names of like silly TV shows, and she's it's Gypsy Woman, I think is the name of the original song, and she's standing on top of a TV to the tune of that song and rambling off like Flintstones and silly TV shows, and then she also does another good parody of Tracy Chapman, who's another one of my
Yes.
probably all-time favorite
Yeah.
musicians. We wore that cassette tape right out when she like looks out the window and it's stuff happening in her neighborhood, and then like writes a song about it. It's just, I think Kim and Damon, who are both have that just natural charisma that like they could be saying nothing and it would still just being around them would make you laugh and smile. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and then anything with David Allen Greer when he plays that,
Absolutely.
yeah, that Tubbs, I
Yeah,
can't
Calhoun Tubbs.
thank you, Calhoun, yes, oh my
Yeah.
god, which was so over my head as a kid, because I was
Mhm.
probably like, maybe 10 or so or something when it was on, so I thought it was funny because I thought, I heard him say like the "like to hear it, here it go" thing, but now
Yeah.
watching it as an adult and he's like totally commenting on what's happening, it's like so not appropriate. Um, the one I was watching last night, he was at a funeral and he's singing
Mhm.
about how the guy who's in the casket like cheated on the wife who was crying. It's just, oh my god,
Mhm.
so good. Um, and I think I did like Men on Films too, which I know that would could be an interesting if that was on TV today. But again, I didn't find and I'm part of the LGBTQ community, and I don't personally find that offensive. I find it hilarious because I don't think
Mhm.
they like you said, they weren't trying to offend anybody. I think they're trying to like show like that, these guys were gay and happy and they wanted everybody to be as excited and happy about stuff as they were. And so I found those characters to be like really endearing. Like if they were my neighbors, I would want to go like hang out with them and like invite them over
Yeah.
for like dinner or something, like 'cause they would just be so fun and their perspective on everything would be so uplifting and funny and I just, you know, I know that faced some backlash, but I thought that was
Mhm.
genius.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. I think the Men on Film, and just all of the Men on sketches, I think for the most part, they do age really well, and they're still really funny.
yes,
And I do think that they were made with good intentions. And even, as someone who said, like, it would be different if it were two gay men doing the bit, but
sure.
considering the fact that it is two straight men, I kind of think that makes it even funnier.
Right.
Because Damon's sitting here with his like chest
Yeah.
meat out.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? I think it
Yeah.
makes it a bit funnier that it is two straight men.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I agree. I think that it was hilarious, and I do think that if we were to meet Anton and Blaine, or Blaine and Antoine, sorry,
Yes. Yeah.
that they would just be they would bring the good vibes and good energy to like any conversation.
Right. Yeah, I think it showed more that they were kind of like allies more than anything else by doing that, just saying like, we're not afraid to portray you and, like yeah, there's a really I don't know if you've ever seen there was an episode eventually of Men On where Damon Wayans' character gets hit over the head with like a frying pan or something like that, and then
Yeah.
he's like suddenly like really straight and he's like, why am I wearing this little hat? Like what the
Yeah.
and David Allen Greer's character is like so distraught and doesn't understand what happened. And oh my God, it's
Yeah.
so good. And it's still so funny that was on 30 years ago or whatever, it's like just as funny now, as it was back then. And that's again very telling too, because if you watch old Saturday Night Live, not that you can really, it's like comparing apples and oranges, but if you watch something that's 30 years ago from SNL, it's not going to be as funny as something from In Living Color, because it's just a lot more timeless, I think, than
Yeah.
where a lot of Saturday Night Live stuff feels very like locked in time. So just I love that. So there's so many I could go on, but their characters are just fantastic. Let's see. Do you have a sense? You kind of did one of your documentaries focuses on it, but can you tell us a little bit about why you think In Living Color was unfortunately canceled after it was
Um,
cut too short?
yeah, I think so. I do think that the quality dropped in the fifth season. I think that it just wasn't as good. It wasn't as relevant, I felt, and it wasn't as hip hop focused. And I've talked about hip hop like plenty of times on my channel before, and how hip hop, I think like Andre 3000 said one time, the first part of hip hop is hip. And
Hmm.
so hip hop has to be about what's happening right now,
Yeah.
whether it's like, commenting on something or whether it's not, but it has to be about what's happening right now. And because it was a hip hop show, it was also about what was happening right now. And I think that in the fifth season, they started to make things that they wanted to be accessible to everyone. They wanted everyone to like it.
Hmm.
And so I think they were too focused on that, and it just wasn't very good. And because of that, the ratings dropped, and so it got canceled. But I do think that even if the Wayanses had remained and it stayed sort of true to its core values of being like a funny hip hop show, I think
Yeah.
that Fox would have still tried to control it a bit more. And so I think that what they wanted was another show that would have the same sort of appeal to people, but that they could control a bit more. And
Yeah.
after that, a lot of people reminded me in the comments because they thought I forgot they had House of Buggin' after
Hmm.
In Living Color. But House of Buggin' was all Latino cast. It
Huh.
was headed by John Leguizamo.
Oh wow.
But it's very obscure because it was only greenlit for one season. And
Hmm.
I think only half of the season ended up airing because the ratings weren't very good.
Yeah.
And so I think that they tried to do what they did within Living Color there, another sort
Yeah.
of like narrow casting attempt. And it just wasn't working. And so they did Mad TV. Mad
Oh right.
TV
Yep.
appealed a little bit more to more people. There were more, it was a more diverse, I would say, just because there were people of color, but there were also more white people on the show.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming, I haven't done all the research on that TV, but I'm assuming that they just had a bit more say and a bit more sway even about what got put into that show. And so it was just a bit easier for them to make sure that they were okay with whatever was going up on TV.
Right. Yeah, well, because it's too bad that yeah, Fox wanted to have that much control, because it sounded like In Living Color really helped sort of revitalize the Fox network or whatever, which was kind of like failing, and they were getting 20 million views of episodes and stuff. So it's really too bad that that things kind of ended the way that they did. Because I think one thing you mentioned in your documentary is that Keenan ended up leaving a little bit, like, was it season 4 that he left?
Yeah, so he appeared to sort of introduce the cast members and the new cast members in the first episode of season 4. And then sometimes when they had a musical guest at the end, he would sort of pop up at the end.
Yeah,
But that was really it. He wasn't there. And then right around the Christmas episode, he resigned and he told everyone that he was resigning. And then after that, you'll notice that Marlon stopped appearing on the show, Damon stopped appearing on the show, and it was just sort of Kim and Sean because they were locked into their contracts still.
mm,
And Damon and Marlon were more of like features, and so
yeah,
they were sort of episode by episode. And so it really fell off around that time because from what I read,
sure,
Kelly Caulfield wasn't pleased, David Allen Greer wasn't pleased, and it was just very tense
yeah,
after that. And so, yeah, it's sort of, I think it was because I was reading the book alongside watching the show, but
sure,
I thought that there was a dip in quality sort of after the that first episode. Not the first episode, I'm sorry, the Christmas episode, especially because they were sort of reaching back and pulling out skits and sketches that had been scrapped
hmm,
and putting them in the show to sort of fill in because they didn't have the Wayneses anymore.
yeah.
And so, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're totally right on that one. And I'm trying to remember what was the reasoning behind Keenan departing the show.
So, the way that it was described in the book, it was that essentially Fox wanted something cut out of the show. I don't know what episode, I don't know
That's right.
what
Yeah, yeah,
such, and Ken did not want to cut it. And he said that he would, or not he said, but he did hide the tape in the ceiling in the office.
yeah,
And Fox said, well, hey, Keenan, this is our show. It's on our network. You're in our offices. We'll come
yeah,
get the tape. And it was just sort of the last straw, I guess, just all of the years of what he had been dealing with. It just sort of,
yeah,
there's the straw that broke the camel's back. And he just decided that he was finished.
yeah. That's too bad when, yeah, when somebody's like creative energy is sort of, stripped away. I can only imagine, and I can respect that he was, if you're not going to do the show the way that we've been doing it, and the way that I've envisioned it, then um, I'm out, which is totally understandable. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's in some ways, yeah, it's not surprising that it kind of took a dip after he left. And I think you noted that a lot of especially his siblings who were still contractually obligated to be on the show, they kind of like weren't giving it 100% in their skits because they were just really disappointed with kind of the direction that the show was going and that Keenan wasn't a part of it anymore. That loyalty was very deep and sincere, and that
Yeah.
would be hard without him there. Was there anything that you found kind of like any behind the scenes information that you found kind of like funny or surprising when you were doing your research about the show?
Um, I will say that I found the whole sort of issue with Kim Coles really surprising. As
Yeah,
someone that grew up watching Living Single, it's just the epitome of sitcoms for me. I just think it's so
yeah,
brilliant.
yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Queen Latifah.
Oh God, me too.
Um, like the
Yes.
music, the acting, the humanitarianism, like all of it.
Hmm.
And so
That
I
and the
love
theme
Living
song
Single.
is just
It's
incredible. That's always
brilliant.
stuck in my head. Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
Um,
Yeah,
and Kim Coles is just hilarious on that
yeah,
show. She's so funny. And I had always heard that she got famous because of In Living Color. And so to go back and watch the first season and to see how little she was like involved,
yeah,
and then to read and hear that she sort of felt that she was treated unfairly. Um, it made me kind of sad because she is so funny and so talented,
yeah,
and because In Living Color was so important and so funny. That was really surprising to me. But I would say, other than that, I was just surprised by, like we were talking about before, just the fact that it's still so funny, and
hmm,
in a lot of cases, it's still really relevant.
yep,
And like you were saying, a lot of things don't age well.
yes,
Or even, just watching, like you said, just old episodes of SNL. A lot of the times they're not funny or they miss the mark or whatever it might be.
right,
But In Living Color is still just so funny. All the performances are still so great. And I would even go so far as to say that everyone on that show is still so funny and so
Mhm.
great, like, right now.
Yeah.
When they have, like, panels about the show, they're all just still, like, firing on all cylinders. Like, it's
Yeah.
still just, like, the same, like, witty, sort of sharp, comedy and delivery. And so I think that's a testament to, each of them individually, but also just, like, how well they all seem to work together.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think I learned some interesting things from what you put together about I think it was about, like, Shawn Wayne's, like, he was a DJ, which I distinctly remember, up on that
Yeah.
little loft thing on the set, and that he wasn't actually, like, a DJ. It was kinda like fake record, like a fake DJ setup or whatever, and he
Yeah,
would just
that was really surprising because
Yeah,
he is a real life DJ.
yeah,
And so I was like, "What? That's why would we do it that way?" But,
yeah,
it makes sense that it makes sense. But, he's just, like, so into it, you know?
yes.
And so but he's not doing anything.
Right, yeah, that's yeah, and he said he would get, like, the music in advance so he could kinda, like, get the jam out to a little bit, and then he'd be ready to kinda dance in time with it on the show. That was
Yeah.
hysterical. That's priceless. I was trying to think, you mentioned something else about him. Was it Sean that was, friends with Heavy D, right? And he
Yeah, so I read there that's the thing about, some of these stories. Some places say that he was Damon's friend,
Mhm.
because there's a clip in there too of Damon rapping for,
Yes.
I think, Arsenio Hall,
Yeah, yeah,
and Damon is actually a DJ as well, but, some say that he was Damon's friend, some say that he was Sean's friend, but I think
yeah,
in the actual video, I believe I said that he was Sean's friend, yeah.
yeah. And so Sean or Damon approached him, and he agreed to do the theme song,
Mhm, yep,
which is
and slam dunk.
yeah, oh my god, yes. The sad thing is, like, so I, try to get some exercise, a couple of times a week, and, one thing 'cause I'm always, researching stuff for podcasts, but I'm also just, like, very partial to television theme songs, so I've found myself lately, I'm just, like, waiting for someone to be like, "What are you doing?" When I'm on, like, an elliptical, I'm watching, like, the intro to In Living Color, I'm like, "This is," it's, like, so good.
Yeah.
I was waiting for someone to be like, what? Like, why are you not watching, like, a movie or, like, running through a forest or something, but you're watching, like, okay, TV show, intro songs? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
It I didn't even think about it like that. Maybe I should listen to it when I work out.
S
Either of those first 2 versions. I think they're
Yes.
both just so good and so energetic. And I think it's great that you're partial to theme songs because so am I.
Oh god, me too.
A lot of the
I
'90s ones were just they were just
Yes.
so great.
Right. They're so short because we have no attention span, so they're all, like, 2 seconds now. But yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
in '90s and '80s, I actually was hoping, so I did an episode, couple couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or 2 ago, about, sitcoms that were led by, Black actors or had, like, an all Black, ensemble, and so one show I discussed was Gimme a Break, which I was a huge fan of as a kid and loved, Nell Carter, and somebody made this really awesome remix of the Gimme a Break theme song, and actually tried to contact them to see, like, could I, like, play play your remix or whatever on my show? I can make sure to give you, you know, say your name and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I didn't hear back from them, but I've been, like,
Oh,
jamming
no.
out to the "Give Me a Break" theme song remix too, which again, I'm just, like, waiting for somebody like, "Why are you watching, like, a sitcom from 1985 while you're exercising?" It's really random, but, yeah. So if you were to have to choose, do you like Heavy D's season 1 theme song or the one that was, like, seasons 2 through for, I think, a couple of years? Which one of those would you say is your favorite?
Um, oh my gosh. I don't
So it's
This
a
is
tough
like
one.
choosing between my children.
Right, exactly. You gotta pick one.
Um, I would probably say the second one. Um, I just think the verse part, I like it a
Mhm.
little bit more on that one, but I like the production from the first one
Yeah,
more. Um, uh, I
yeah.
would say the second one though, probably.
Yeah, I find myself watching the second one a lot when I'm on an elliptical. It really really gets the juices flowing, but yeah, it's just so darn catchy, and I feel like, the message behind the song is really nice too, just like, what if everybody just kinda, like, got along and had a fun time? I mean, that's a really, a statement that nobody can argue with, and, I
Yeah,
think yeah, and having Heavy D, I think at the time, like, the timing for him to perform that song was, like, perfect, because he was so, um, well known, I think, at that time, and I imagine that probably helped him get to be even more well known. But then I think maybe the last two seasons, I think it was still heavy. It sounded like it's still heavy D, but it was kind of had more of like a kind of a club sort of vibe to it.
Yeah, that was the 5th season. It had more of like a like it was almost like clubby, like jazzy kind
Yeah,
of. Yeah, and it was still heavy D, but if I'm remembering correctly, and I might not be, I don't think there was any like of the rap part in it. It was just like the chorus like remixed and jumbled up a little
yeah.
bit. And yeah, I didn't like that one nearly as much.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of repetition on the chorus because I remember hearing like "You can do what you want," like
Yeah.
over and over and over again. Yeah, and it doesn't have
Yeah.
the same like I loved the kind of artwork, of the second and third and fourth seasons that they did, and then the like paint with season one that they utilized. I'm actually like toying with the idea of like trying to make like a really bad promo thing for this episode, like trying to grab some paint cans and try not to make a mess in my garage because it's just so clever and
Yeah.
so memorable, which like you
I
said, I
thought
mean,
that was pretty cool. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like that if that didn't get you pumped up to watch the show, then I don't know, what would. Like it's just fun and well done and creative and I think told you a little bit about kind of those the actors personalities and stuff in the intro, and it's just so well executed. um so just a couple more questions here to in conclusion about your fabulous work on In Living Color. What do you think the lasting impact of In Living Color has been and or will be?
Um, I think I think like we were saying, it has aged really well. And so I think that any person who wants to succeed in comedy and needs a reference on how to do a sketch, how to write a more like loaded sketch that's also funny, or how to sort of take the blueprint of a sketch and make it work for the now. Like, for example, Jews on First. They sort
Hmm.
of readapted the Abbott and Costello
Yeah,
thing. I think it just sort of any example of how to do something well in comedy, I think that people can look at in Living Color. How to talk about stereotypes, how to comment on what's happening, or how to not comment on what's happening.
yeah,
Some of the sketches were about nothing, and that's
right,
okay too. But I do also think that In Living Color did have some misses. And so I think that also within that, there are examples of what not to do in
yeah,
comedy. I think there are examples of sort of what will push people's buttons, but in the right way.
hmm,
Um, I think in terms of like Fire Marshal Bill and some of the other characters, I think they sparked a little bit of outrage, but it's sort of like, I don't want to say good outrage, but the sort of outrage that I don't think if Fire Marshal Bill were to get launched now and it would have a little bit of outrage, I don't think it would get canceled or anything. I think
right,
that's the kind of good outrage that you want. Um,
right,
but with sketches like Bolt 45, I think that's obviously an example of bad outrage, and
yeah,
that's why it got pulled.
right,
Um, but yeah, I really think that it's sort of like a comedy Bible almost. Like there's
hmm,
just so much there.
yeah,
And even every time for example, I just watched Jews on First again yesterday because I
hmm,
just love it so much. And I feel like every time I watch it, I like notice something different.
yeah,
Um, and the last time I watched it, I was just watching Damon and his Farrakhan impression.
yes,
And I was like,
so
"Oh
good,
my God, that's brilliant." I wasn't even focusing on that before.
yeah,
So yeah, I really think that people can just sort of look back at the show if they can find a copy of it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, really, yeah.
yeah,
They
and they
released
can
like a
sort of
special edition DVD set. I think that I may have bought for my dad or something because as soon as I saw that was available, I was like, oh my god,
yeah, yeah. If I think I saw maybe like one or two of like all five of them together, but other than that, you're buying like a DVD at a time or like a
yeah,
season at a time, and that's really unfortunate. But I think if since Keenan did sign his rights over, I think if Fox ever gets it together and just puts out a sort of another run of the DVDs, I think they'll sell like so fast.
yes,
People
they
would
should.
love to have In Living Color like on their shelves again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe they could do like, Nickelodeon did like Nick at Night, which started when I was a kid. They should do like old school, Fox stuff at night. I'm sure people would, if they want to air that again, my God, people would eat that right up, I think.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that show certainly left, really big impression. And I know I did an episode on a podcast episode on Soul Train. I can't remember when that was, maybe last year. And I remember one kind of point that stood out to me is that part of the reason why, people really loved that show is like, and this is very easy for me to say, because I don't, can't be in that person's shoes by any means, but for it was like for once, Black people are being portrayed as like having fun, like listening to music. It doesn't, like the exposure was so minimal, and anything that was on was always bad. And
Mhm.
I, hopefully, people remember that show too. Like, like there's a lot of other facets of what, Black actors and can be put in, and they're, like it doesn't always have to be some stereotyped role on some movie, that they are just as, like can put on funny skits and funny bits and do impressions and stuff. And I think for a lot of people, my generation, my parents' generation too, I think this was good, good for them to watch too, because I think my parents grew up, at a tough time where people, next door neighbors, weren't so nice to different cultures and stuff, and so I think that this, I mean, there's just so many layers of why the show was so amazing. I think for anybody who is smart enough to watch it. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think if I think back to like the top 5 or 10 shows that had an impact or that I remember watching as a kid that I liked and still like today, In Living Color would certainly be at the top of the list. I'm so grateful that we were able to watch it. Even I'm sure there's probably times it was turned off, but so I was relatively young-ish. But I'm just so glad that I have those memories of watching such great shows, that it wasn't just like a narrow focus with what we were able to watch on TV as kids. I'm glad that my parents didn't restrict that, or, weren't, you know, yeah, they just were good good at exposing stuff as much as they could in our little bubble. Um, what do you think that the lasting legacy of the Wayans family will be?
Oh my gosh. I think that that is so complicated
Hmm.
because I think that the first generation of the five Wayanses, I think that they have just set such a precedent and they've just set the bar really high. And because of that, I
Very
think
true.
that the second generation of Wayanses has sort of had trouble finding their place.
Hmm.
um, Damon Wayans Jr., for example, is so funny and he's so talented and hilarious.
Yeah.
Um, and but it never, and he's in his 40s also, and it never fails that there's a conversation about his father in
Yeah.
every
Oh, that's so
interview I've
true.
ever seen.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I'm just like, but he's like has his own credentials, and I think he's so interesting. And
Yeah.
he never, and none of them ever seem to sort of dislike that or get upset about that. But I think that they've been working on building their own credentials and trying to do their own thing for a while. But I do think that they have to sort of live in the shadow of the first generation of Wayanses, even with
Yeah.
second generation Wayans, which was like the short-lived show that Craig and Damien Dante had with George Gore.
Hmm.
Um, that show, it was canceled, and I don't think it was. I don't think people really watched it. And looking back on it, I couldn't find it before I
Yeah.
did the documentaries either, which usually means that there wasn't a lot of interest for it. And so I know it's going to be sort of like an uphill battle for them, but I just have like so much faith in them. I
Yeah.
think they are so funny. Um, and yeah, and I know also that a lot of the other Wayans children, so like Sean's kids, I think he has like one of his daughters is a director, another of
Cool.
his daughters is maybe a photographer. And so
Nice.
they're doing their own thing, a lot of them sort of just out of the spotlight, but they are successful.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's great. And I think that that's sort of like all you could ask for.
Right.
But I think the ones that want to be in entertainment, like Craig and Damien, I think that it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them, unfortunately. But I'm always, rooting for the Wayanses,
Yeah.
always.
It's incredible. Yeah. How many families can say, I mean, what they were able to do all together? I mean, it's just like, I'm just, like you said, I can't believe that there isn't more, there isn't some like I don't know, like a made for TV movie or anything about them because it's
Yeah.
so incredible. I mean, it's like, you know,
Well, I will say Damon said one time that's one of them has to die before
oh,
they put out a
oh
before
Jesus,
they
he's
do a show or something. He
probably
said,
right.
"Well, somebody has to die first."
Right.
So I don't want that to happen anytime
No.
soon, but I do
Yeah.
want a show or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't. Yeah. It's crazy that they haven't gotten more, more attention with that because it's just incredible. Um, have you gotten any feedback from people about your documentaries? Whether it's, I mean, um, somebody in the comments or has like maybe has anybody connected to the Wayans family somehow stumbled upon it or contacted you?
No, no one connected to the Wayans has discovered it. I do know that like Marlon Wayans is chronically online usually. But I definitely I hope that they see it one day, but I'm sort of not holding out for that.
Yeah.
Especially knowing I know that, you know, I missed some things, maybe I misinterpreted some things, I made some mistakes.
Right.
And so that makes me a little anxious. But they haven't said anything, but I get lots of feedback in the comments always,
Hmm.
which is actually something that I'm learning now because this is sort of like the first set of my videos to get attention like this.
Yeah.
I've had some, you know, videos get popular, but not sort of all at once like
Yeah.
this. And so I'm learning that, you know, not every comment is sort of even meant for me. Some
Right.
people are just sort of talking.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of people are sort of they don't believe that Dwayne Wayans passed away, the oldest Wayans.
Oh, yes.
Um,
Yes. I think I
I
saw
get a
some.
I get a lot of comments about that. um, and um, I think also I get comments just about just small errors. A lot of people think that I don't know about Jennifer Lopez because I didn't talk about her immediately.
Yeah.
But I also think that that's sort of a testament to how much people love that show,
Yeah.
that they want you to cover it, but they want you to get it right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think that that's more of what it is that they just love it and they're like, finally, someone did it.
Yeah.
But it's sort of just
Agreed.
not the way that they envisioned it. And so I think that that's okay. But I've
Yeah.
gotten a lot of comments, and so it's kind of like um, overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure. Oh my God, trying to keep up with all that must be just nuts. Yeah. And it is amazing what, people, it's usually the people who have somebody who comments like negatively on something is usually somebody that has A, no experience with research, B, no experience with making videos, C, no experience with writing, D, it's like, it's always a person
Yeah.
like the least qualifications to comment on something that is, so like I'm a photographer and people are like, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, you're not a photographer. The last time you took pictures was like 1985. Like, just, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, just please know you're not in the right lane here. So, but hopefully most of it is positive because I would hope that it would be because they're just incredible and just a great source of information. But again, so well done, and the text and the graphics and like I mean, it's just all really like engaging to watch too. Like in addition to all the material, of course, which is on on the show, but it's just really executed very well. So I think hopefully just even more people will watch them because they're just so great.
Yeah.
And I guess my last question would be, if you could ask Keenan Ivory Wayans any question in the world, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. Oh man. Oh, I don't even know. Um, I guess I am curious. I know that there was a failed In Living Color reboot and everything,
Hmm,
but I guess considering how fast we get information about the news, about pop culture, just how accessible it is,
yeah,
I'm curious about how Keenan would have his writers find um, relevant topics, I guess, to write sketches about.
yeah,
Because I talk about in the documentary how they used to sort of page through the newspaper every weekend, or they would write about sort of obviously the big events happening.
yeah,
But nowadays it's like every event is a big event because you know
right,
about everything.
right,
So I'm curious as to how he would have them look, and then also how he would curate that. How would he go through the sketches and determine which ones are more sort of topical than the
Yeah.
next. And then obviously from there, which ones are actually funny and which
Yeah.
ones aren't funny.
Wow.
Um,
That's a
oh my
very
God.
thoughtful question. That's a really great answer. I would have said like, do you still have the wig from, I like, I
That's a
like, no,
good
that's a
question
very,
too. Do you
well,
have
you're
like the Frenchy suit? Do you have
right.
the wig still?
Does the Frenchy suit still fit? Because it probably does, because you're in excellent shape.
Because you look
Um,
the same.
right. But so that's a really great, insightful question. That would be really interesting. Like, what would Living Color 2.0 look like? Yeah, be so different. What the emphasis would be on, and yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good question. All right. So, where can people find you out in the world and on the internets, the World Wide Web?
My YouTube is youtube.com/Jane for short. I am on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter under Jane for shorts, plural with an S.
Okay. Yep.
I don't use any of those, but if you would like to follow me there, I do
Yeah.
check them about once a month.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, good for you. Well, you're in graduate school and you've got a lot going on. That's good to not be hyper focused on that. So totally understandable. And like I said, I'll make sure to include all of your contact information and a link to your YouTube page in the show notes for people to find. And I'll put some more information on my website as well. So I just want to thank you again so very much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you for making those incredible videos. I think that really spoke to a lot of people and resonated with a lot of people. And I know especially, people my age who grew up watching it, having, getting some behind the scenes information about the beloved show was just really meaningful. So thank you for all of your hard work. Do you have any kind of upcoming project ideas for your videos?
Right now I'm working on a deep dive about The Wire and The Corner and
Hmm.
Homicide: Life on the Street because they're all
Wow.
connected. So that's sort of the next deep dive, and the first part of that should be posted by the end of May.
Wow. Nice. Okay. Well, we'll definitely keep a lookout for that. So thank you again so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. You're welcome back anytime.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right.